this book has dragons in it and it has lesbians. Personally, that was enough for me to pick it up. I guess I just didn't pay attention to the men in this book. I can't do this. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Hayley and today I'm going to be giving you some book recommendations. Okay, let's just hop right into the video. I actually got this video idea from Whitney from Whitney Novels. She basically just recommended books that she loves but she doesn't really talk about on her channel, and I was like, you know what, this is the perfect video for me because I feel like in every single video I talk about the same books and we all know what books those are. I think everyone at this point thinks that I only read Sarah J. Maas and Cassandra Clare, but I don't. I know, kind of crazy. I do read other things and I'm gonna tell you about those other things that I read. Obviously there are hundreds of books that I love that I have not talked about on my Twitter, my Instagram, my channel here. Mostly I'm talking about my channel. Like a couple of these books I'm sure you will have seen that I mentioned on my Twitter. For the most part, I'm doing books that I have not talked about on my channel. I'm only including a couple of books in this list because I do want to make another one of these videos down the line, especially if you guys like it. I'm going to talk about the most popular book first. The first book I have on this list is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Oh my god, you guys, I'm holding books up in my video. Isn't that crazy? Usually I just have the little cover in editing, but I actually have all of these books, so I'm gonna show them. But yeah, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins is book number one. You can see how worn this book is. I feel like this is a book that really got me into reading because I remember when I read this book, you guys, I was so into it. I love this book so much. This is definitely what got me into like dystopian and fantasy, because you know how fantasy is my favorite genre now. This is definitely a book that got me into stuff like that because before The Hunger Games, I mostly just read contemporary books and I honestly read a lot of books about animals. I don't know why. I mean, I know why because I love animals, but I never reread books. But The Hunger Games I actually have reread. I just love this book so much. I'm not going to explain what it's about because you all know what it's about. My friend read this book when she was like 6. Anyway, okay, so the next book that I have is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I read this book this year. Normally, I don't really care about writing in books. I only really care about it if it's like either really, really good or if it's really bad and it's hindering my ability to read the book and enjoy the book. But this book, I love the writing in this book. It's just so pretty. It's definitely quite poetic and flowery. I know some people don't really like it when books do the most with descriptions and they don't get to the point or whatever. And I'm kind of one of those people, but it really depends on what the book is. Like if it's fantasy, I'm like, just get to the point. You know what I mean? That's kind of hypocritical because I'm about to talk about Priory of the Orange Tree and it's another story. This book is basically just about This book is just about Patroclus and Achilles, their lives together as children and then growing up and having to fight in the war. It's really cute. It's really beautiful. It's really sad. I definitely cried a little bit when I read it, but kind of surprisingly, I didn't cry that much. There are just, there's so many quotable lines in this book and it's so heartwarming, heart-wrenching, heartbreaking. I don't know how to describe it other than that. This is why I don't do book reviews because I just can't articulate myself well. The next book that I have is The Art of Racing the Rain by Garth Stein. This is one of my favorite books of all time and I never talk about it because so many people just like to judge me when I mention that the narrator is a dog. But listen, he doesn't read like a dog. It's not like he's just like sniff, 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 woof, woof every 5 seconds. No, it's not like that at all. He just reads like a person. The only reason you even know he's a dog is because he mentions that he's a dog and because people treat him like a dog. I read this book so quickly. I remember I read it in like the same time span that I read Six of Crows, and those are 2 of my favorite books of all time. I never talk about this one because obviously Six of Crows is way more mainstream in this community, but for this one I'm like, everyone's just like, why would I read a book about a dog, you know? And I'm like, why wouldn't you read a book about a dog? Like, gain a new perspective, you know what I mean? This book made me cry so hard. I just remember when I finished it, I was not okay. This book is basically just about a dog and his life. Obviously, it's like you're watching everything through his eyes, but you see his people family go through so much stuff and just all the freaking trials and tribulations and just the hardships and like the good things that happen in life. And it's just such a cute read. This book made me feel everything. I was angry. I was sad. I was so happy. And I think that this book, it's so short. If you're looking for something, just a quick little read, you know, maybe to get you out of a slump, I think that this is a really, really good one. It does have metaphors about like racing, like race car driving. That was the only thing that I didn't really like about this book. Even though I thought they were pretty well done, I was just like, I can't relate to driving, so I don't relate. Other than that, it was really cute and I love this book. So I think that like everyone should read it. That's just my opinion. The next book that I have is Hyperbole in Half by Ali Brosh. I think that's her name, Ali Brosh. This is a graphic novel, and I don't read a lot of graphic novels because I just don't. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of overwhelmed because there are so many. This one though, this is just such a fun book because the images are so funny, and also just the stuff that happens in the book is funny. I think it's really relatable just in terms of like growing up and, you know, learning how to laugh at your mistakes, learning how to get through the toughest moments in your life. This book talks about depression and anxiety and just how hard it is to grow up and then, you know, become an adult and like leave that innocence behind your childhood. Like it's such a good book. I haven't read it in so many years. I feel like this is a book that I should be rereading because it would be so easy to reread. I remember for a really long time, I would just always want to have this book with me because it made me so happy. And now I feel like I relate to it a lot more. Like it's really funny. If you're looking for another book to get you out of a slump, I would definitely recommend this one. Obviously, I recommend all of these books. I don't know why would I not? Anyway, this is going to be difficult for me to describe because I just want to do it justice. When the Emperor Was Divine by Julia Otsuka. I read this in school in my sophomore year of high school. This is a historical fiction novel and it details the experience of a Japanese American family when they were sent to the internment camps. Oh my god, look at my little annotations. What did I say at the end? I always do this. I just said beautiful. This book is really short. It's not even 150 pages, but it's so full of amazing themes and metaphors. And I just remember my English teacher, when she told me about the author, she was like, yeah, when she turned her book in to her editors, they only gave her like 7 corrections or 7 edits, and which, first of all, how? But the author, I guess, was like really relieved because the book was exactly how she wanted it to be, and if anyone had told her that she needed to change it, she would have been like, absolutely not. It's just so well done. So well done. This next book I have, I don't even know how I'm gonna describe it. I wrote a whole review on An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I remember I was looking at my review because in the beginning it was like, I don't read that much dystopian, and I was like, dystopian? Because I feel like everyone describes it as fantasy. Like I describe it as fantasy. I think mostly because there's magic, so I'm like, it's fantasy. But then when you think about it, it doesn't have that many like magical elements, so it kind of seems like a dystopian because the world is still very much so like our world, but just not. I don't even know how to describe the genre of this book. I'm just gonna say fantasy. This is a pretty popular book in the book community, except it's not. Like people know about it, but they don't talk about it. I'm one of those people. The sequel to this book is one of my favorite books of all time. For some reason, I never talk about it. There's great representation in this book. It's super diverse. The characters, both people of color. The 4th book, A Sky Beyond the Storm, is coming out in December, so I'll be rereading this whole series. Now I have to explain it. I hate explaining books. In this book, we have multiple point of views, but the main characters that you need to worry about are Leia and Elias. Leia is a slave and Elias is a soldier. I can't do this. Elias is training to become a soldier of these people that have essentially colonized this entire group of people called the Scholars. So Leia is a scholar. The whole premise of this book is that her brother gets like taken, and Leia is like, I need to infiltrate the school where all these soldiers are training at in order to figure out where her brother went. She essentially becomes like a spy in order to find out more information, but she acts as a slave in this place. Obviously Elias is there because he's training to become one of these soldiers that like oppresses and kills everyone. Their paths cross. Shit happens. Elias is kind of like that guy that's like, he doesn't really like what he's doing because he feels like his fate obviously has been like forced upon him, but he doesn't feel like he belongs as this soldier. All you need to know is that these people who are of different backgrounds and are supposed to be enemies come together and are like, you know what? we gotta help each other out. And then you have this other girl who is Elias's best friend, who's just this white woman who is a colonizer. She's kind of a badass, I'm not gonna lie. We don't have time to unpack what I just said right there. She has a really cool arc. All you need to know is that this book is really cool, and when I read it at the time, I remember I was really surprised by the amount of violence that is in it. If I read it now, I don't think I'd be as surprised. This book is pretty graphic. There are some torture scenes that I was just like, because I mean, it technically is YA. Like, there was a whole conversation on Twitter the other day of people talking about if it should be adult or if it should be new adult, because it's so intense sometimes. But I feel like it's fine as a young adult book. It's really well written. I think that the story is super gripping. People on book Twitter are always eating books like this up, and it's a crime that no one talks about it, so I'm here to do the work. I feel like this is cheating because I just finished this book like 2 or 3 days ago, so obviously I haven't talked about it. This is The Priory of the Orange Tree. It's the most beautiful book I've ever seen in my life. It's also so heavy and so thick. It's only like 800 pages. I honestly was not intimidated by this book. Everyone's like, I'm so scared because of the page count. And I'm like, why? I wish that this book was a series, because when I finished it, I was like crying. It wasn't even sad. I was just sad because I just wanted more. Let me explain this book for a second. This book has dragons in it, and it has lesbians. Personally, that was enough for me to pick it up, but if you need a little bit more, I will say the main thing that you need to know is that there are opposing sides for all these countries, because there's like this one big giant dragon who is like destined to rise again. Obviously, some people consider dragons to be gods, and then other people want to kill the dragon. So those are like the two main opposing sides. But the characters in this book are so cool, because you have this one girl. I mean, I would consider her to be kind of like an assassin, but technically she's like a dragon slayer. She has magical powers and she's a badass. And then we have another girl who is trying to become a dragon rider. She's also a badass. And then we have this other guy who's a doctor. He's so irrelevant. Like, every time his point of view came up, it was so laughable to me because I hated him, and all he did was complain. But I was thinking that he's actually really relatable, because a lot of people hate their lives and have gotten themselves into a shitty situation that they can't get out of, and now they're just kind of stuck complaining. So that's kind of how he was. And I was like, as much as I hate to admit it, sometimes I be thinking like him. Sometimes I'm like, I hate it here, and that's all he did. He made so much trouble for the other characters, and it was so interesting but so frustrating to watch, because I always knew that what he did was gonna fuck up some other characters' journey into doing whatever the heck they needed to do. So I understand why his point of view was necessary, but I just still hated him. And there's another guy who I don't know him. I don't really know what his goal was. He was just trying to help people, trying to win the war or whatever. I guess I just didn't pay attention to the men in this book. I was always so threatened by adult fantasy books, but this one, it really did everything for me. I love this book. I can't wait to go in and annotate it, because I read it on ebook and then I was like, I have to buy it immediately. And I'm so glad that I did, because look at it. Those are all the books that I wanted to recommend for this books that I love but never talk about. I'm gonna make another one of these videos because there are so many other books that I love that I never talk about. Yeah, stay tuned for that one. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.